Today we take you down memory lane, on the journey to our independence, the symbol of nationhood from which our pride is sprung. Reliving the historic night which saw the lowering of the Union Jack and the hoisting of the golden arrowhead, restoring a ray of hope for the Guyanese people, one that still lives in our hearts. I am Shivani Rampasad. You're watching Guyana 411. Stay tuned. The lead up to Guyana's independence was a tense time. Alliances were crumbling and lines were being drawn. But eventually the country came together as one people, forging one independent nation towards a common destiny.
The first political party was formed in British Guyana in 1950. The party, founded by Dr. Cheddi Jagan and Forbes Burnham, was called the People's Progressive Party, the PPP. Polarizing views between Jagan and Burnham led to the leaders splitting in 1955. Burnham then formed the People's National Congress, the PNC, after the split. The PNC would compete against the PPP in 1961 when British Guyana was granted self-rule by the then British monarchy. After a keen contest, Jagan became the premier and served until 1964. The period between 1961 and 1963 was plagued with opposition, street protests, civil strikes, and other forms of unrest. In an attempt to resolve the disturbances, political parties asked the British to modify the constitution to allow for proportional representation. Francis Kwame Faria, who lived through pre-independence, shares the mood of the country at the time.
Cheddi Jagan and Forbes Burnham and others were championing the cause for Guyana's independence for many years.
In response, the British government agreed to grant the colony independence. In 1963, at a constitutional conference in London, plans were worked out for the date of Guyana's independence. But the parties were unable to come to any agreement and the conference almost collapsed.
The nation was at that time kept up to date. There wasn't television, there was radio and there was the newspaper, and we read and we listened to the radio quite a lot. And of course there were also lots of public meetings, street corner meetings as it were.
Elections were set for December 1964. At the end of these elections, Burnham's PNC party came out victorious after the United Force collated with them. During his first year as Prime Minister, Burnham managed to stabilize the colony. But in May of 1965, a state of emergency was once again enforced. At the same time, in London, plans for an independence conference were being discussed. Burnham invited the PPP to discuss issues relating to the Independence Constitution in June of 1965. In October of 1965, Burnham and Jagan met to discuss the agenda for this conference, which was scheduled for the following month in London. A date for independence was set on November 7, 1965. Subsequently, May 26, 1966 was selected as Independence Day. Following the announcement of the date, preparations were made in full the day of independence. The coat of arms was designed by a special committee, the national flag colors were chosen, and a nationwide competition was held to select the words of the national anthem. The selection of other national symbols was on the way as well.
The announcement that Guyana is now free. We have dropped the British. It's no longer British G-U-I-A-N-A. It is now G-U-Y-A-N-A, the independent country. We are our own masters. We will make decisions for ourselves, for our country.
On Thursday, May 26, 1966, Guyana, at the Queen Elizabeth Park, now called the National Park, Burnham lowered the Union Jack and hoisted the golden arrowhead in recognition of Guyana's independence. Before the flag-raising ceremony, Burnham and Jagan hugged each other in celebration of the historic event. The celebration lasted 4 days.
Every country has its symbol of nationhood. The Cooperative Republic of Guyana has its own distinctive set of national symbols. These symbols are iconic and recognized internationally as the signs which represent or identify the state.
Every Guyanese should recognize the national flag, the golden arrowhead, coat of arms, the national flower, the Victoria Regia lily, the national anthem, the national pledge, and the song of the Republic. The golden arrowhead, the national flag of Guyana, bears 5 colors: red, black, gold, white, and green. It was designed by an American vexillologist and then director of the Flag Center in Florida, USA, Whitney Smith. The flag has the unique design of 2 triangles, one within the other, issuing from the same base. The outer triangle is gold-colored, arrow-shaped, with a narrow border of white along 2 sides. The inner triangle is red with a narrow strip of black bordering the sides. The background of the flag is green, representing the agricultural and forested nature of Guyana. The white border represents the rivers and the water potential. The gold arrow represents Guyana's mineral wealth, and the black border the endurance that will sustain the forward thrust of the Guyanese people. The red of the flag represents the zeal and dynamic nature of nation building. The national coat of arms of Guyana was formally granted by the College of Arms in the United Kingdom on February 25, 1966. It is a composite of motifs suggested in separate designs by 3 Guyanese artists. The Amerindian headdress symbolizes the indigenous people. The 2 diamonds at the side of the headdress represent Guyana's mining industry. The helmet is the monarchical insignia. The 2 jaguars holding a pickaxe, one a sugarcane and a stalk of rice, symbolize labor and the 2 main agricultural industries of the country, sugar and rice. The shield, which is decorated with the national flower, the Victoria Regia lily, is to protect the nation. The 3 blue wavy lines represent the many waters of Guyana. The kanji pheasant, the national bird, is at the bottom of the shield and represents a rare bird found principally in this part of the world, and also represents the rich fauna of the nation. The streamer below the shield bears the nation's motto: one people, one nation, one destiny. The Victoria Regia lily was discovered by Robert Schomburg, a German botanist, in 1837 whilst leading an expedition into the interior of what was then British Guyana. In its native habitat of tropical America, the plant is perennial. It grows in 4 to 6 feet of water, and the largest flowers can measure 10 inches to 1 foot in diameter.
Onward, onward, may we ever go. Day by day, strengthening to grow. Till at length we reach a vast shore of Guyana's sons and daughters standing.
One of the other national symbols chosen for Guyana is a bird, the hoatzin or kanji pheasant. It is a reddish-brown bird streaked with green, with its underparts being pale brown. There is a crest of very long feathers on its head, which gives the bird an almost majestic look. This bird can be found throughout the year in areas along the banks of the Berbice River and its tributary, the Kanji Creek, and to some extent on the Abari, Maikoni, and Bahaika rivers. Selected a month before independence in 1966, the national anthem's lyrics were written by Archibald Leonard Luker, an English Anglican priest based in New Amsterdam, Berbice, and the music was composed by Robert Cyril Gladstone Potter. The Reverend A.L. Luker also wrote the national pledge. Written by Cleveland W. Hamilton and set to music by Frank Daniels, is the Song of the Republic. Government is moving to restore a sense of national pride amongst citizens. Identifying and understanding what the national symbols are is a major part of this process.
The swearing-in of the first Speaker of the National Assembly was the beginning of the journey of an independent Guyana on May 26, 1966. Let's look at the first session of Guyana's new parliament.
The first sitting of the National Assembly of Guyana's first parliament was held on May 26, 1966. 50 years later, the first appointed clerk of the National Assembly and Parliament of independent Guyana, Frank Narain, recalls the proceedings of that first sitting.
The Speaker himself, I think, escorted by the Sergeant at Arms and the Mason, and the clerk and maybe the deputy, would have left the chamber and would have gone downstairs to await the arrival of His Royal Highness and Her Royal Highness. And as they arrived, they would be greeted by the speaker and then escorted upstairs. I think they, and before going into the chamber, after they went into the chamber, the speaker himself, who would have had his address of welcome, he was a distinguished teacher. There were in those colonial days these things called letters patent, which were things prepared by Britain, maybe signed by the monarch. I said that whether it's king or queen, and giving instructions or guidelines to the head of the colony, the governor.
Oh.
And it used to be governor then, but at that time it would have been to the governor general here. So these are letters patent, authorizing, as I see, empowering His Royal Highness the Duke of Kent to open the Parliament. So the clerk would have read that, and then after doing that, the speaker would have then invited His Royal Highness to read the speech, as he calls it, the speech from the throne. In Britain, the Queen goes to the Parliament usually once every year to open Parliament, and she reads a speech.
Yes.
It's the speech that would have had the proposals of the government for that coming session of Parliament. The government proposals, what the government intends to do. Her Majesty reads that within the Parliament, and that has become known as the throne speech.
This sitting of the Parliament was chaired by Speaker Aubrey Alleyne. The Duke of Kent read the speech from the then sovereign Queen Elizabeth on her behalf. He handed over the constitutional instruments to Prime Minister Lyndon Forbes Sampson Burnham, which designated Guyana as an independent nation.
And then there was this big document called the Constitution of Guyana. That is the supreme law of the country. That was prepared in Britain for us, with our input, right, as far as I would think. And that would have been handed over in the Parliament chamber to the Prime Minister of the country, Lyndon Forbes Sampson Burnham. He received it and he laid it over in the Parliament. The clerk took possession of it, and I have been in possession of it, and I've had it placed in the library of our Parliament, for which I was responsible in establishing that library. And it is there. Anytime you want to see it, it has the signature, I believe, of Her Majesty. He made an address of thanks.
Yes.
Mr. Burnham. And that was seconded by the leader of the opposition, who would have been Dr. Jagan. Yes. So that was done. And then the business of His Royal Highness was over. So they were allowed to withdraw from the chamber, but the business of the Parliament wasn't
Not
over.
done. Yeah.
So they withdrew, they were seen out, and that ended that formality.
Before Guyana achieved its independence, the policy speech that outlined the government's policies and plans was read in the chamber of what was then the Legislative Assembly by the governor, who was the representative of the British monarch. This practice came to an end when Guyana proclaimed its republican status, with the head of state performing the task of announcing government's policies. However, in 1980, the national constitution was amended. This created an executive president as both head of state and government, who on the opening of every new parliament goes to the National Assembly and addresses its members. The sitting of the National Assembly is only referred to as Parliament when the President visits. On all other occasions, it is referred to as the National Assembly.
On the eve of Guyana's independence from Great Britain, the country was seized by a sense of jubilation and anticipation. 5 decades later, there is a similar air of expectation amongst Guyanese from all walks of life.
It was May 25, 1966, the eve of Guyana's independence celebration from Great Britain, an occasion filled with expectation, pomp, and ceremony, one at which I was absent. But here are the recollections of some persons who were present. Francis Kwamna Fario recalls the day leading up to the evening of May 25, 1966.
Well, my parents, my siblings, we were all prepared and preparing to be down at the National Park. At that time, it wasn't called the National Park. It was known as the Queen Elizabeth Park. Of course, that name was given during the colonial times. So the entire day couldn't go fast enough for us to get down to the National Park, the then Queen Elizabeth Park, to see all the official happenings.
That was the daytime. Francis Fario continues his recollection on what took place on the night of May 25, 1966.
So it was this big entertainment. You had the parade, the police, the military people, the military bands, the choirs, and it was a grand event in which it was the official part with the fireworks, the raising of the Guyana flag, the lowering of the British flag, which was called the Union Jack, and ours was called the Golden Arrowhead. And I mean, it was tremendous. And anyone who was fortunate to have been alive and at the then National Queen Elizabeth Park, now the National Park, would have recalled that feeling where your heart was pumping twice as fast, and the joy and the pride that after all these years of being a colonial people.
Fickinson remembers the independence hug of the two leaders.
Before the flag unfurled, this is the memory that sticks with everybody else because of the friction that there was at the time.
Yes.
The fact that Jagan and Burnham embraced in public view, in it really, I mean, a very warm embrace that set the tone for that night.
Alan Fenty was then a 21-year-old man preparing to get married.
That night, I took the National Park. Another irony is, I think they call it the Queen Elizabeth National Park. Before that, it was the golf ground. And ordinary Guyanese couldn't go there, Georgetown National Park. You know, you couldn't get in there long ago. No, the white people used to play golf. And you couldn't get in there except to search for the balls and so on. But then Burnham said, Queen Elizabeth National Park, after our head of state, who was the Queen still, although we were becoming independent. So that night, thousands upon thousands all across the country. And you had the midnight hour, and Lieutenant Colonel was Desmond Roberts, lowering and raising the Golden Arrowhead.
A then 19-year-old Wim boy, who is now Ghana's Prime Minister, Moses Nagamotu, reflects on that historic night of May 25th.
I remember the big radio set. It might have been big like this. It was called Philips. And battery, a big battery, like a tractor battery. And so we were listening to the live coverage of the independence celebrations in Georgetown. I was in Berbice, in my home village, Wim, and I was glued to the radio, listening to the voices of the most remarkable broadcasters and analysts at that time. Recall Rafi Khan and Fickinson relaying what was happening at the National Park. And it was there that the Golden Arrowhead was being hoisted for the first time. So I recall the sound of jubilation, the sound of elation, and I try to have that in my mind's eye to picture graphically what is happening. And I believe, apart from an announcement that the flag had been hoisted by a team that had visited or had gone to Guyana or Roraima, I believe, there was also, and there was a report that was being broadcast or sent in by whatever means, that the flag had been hoisted at the top of the crest of our highest mountain. I also remember, apart from the hoisting of the flag at the national park, a significant event that was very emotional for me, and I believe for most Guyanese, was when Forbes Burnham, the then Prime Minister, and Chetty Jagan, they embraced. And I believe that the embrace between those two nationalist leaders had become symbolic of the unity we wanted to see in Guyana among our people. And so I think that on the night of May 25th, 1966, it has brought just for that occasion a scintilla of hope, a scintilla of pride, a sense that we were no longer British subjects, we were no longer British objects.
Fast forward 50 years later to 2016. Guyana is an independent nation with a newly elected government, now on the eve of celebrating where we've come from, how we've grown, and the way forward. The Grand Jubilee flag raising ceremony seeks to capture all of this. It starts with a magnificent parade at the freshly created Jubilee Park. Lennox Canterbury explains.
Reflect, celebrate, inspire. That is the main theme for our Jubilee Costume and Float Parade, which is scheduled for the 26th of May, 2016. The parade is scheduled to start at 10 a.m. at Church and Camp Streets and proceed westward to Avenue of the Republic, south into Avenue of the Republic to Brickdam, then east along Brickdam, then you enter Vlasingen Road into Homestretch Avenue and enter Durban Park at the northeastern entrance. There they'll do their display on that huge tarmac, and then they'll exit from the northeastern gate to Homestretch Avenue, turn east and proceed to their place of disbandment.
As if that were not enough, there will be more than 1,000 young Guyanese performing. There will be drums by the 30 Strong, Ostishka and Dubrach Tassa groups, the sweet songs of Steel Pan, Guyana's leading panists, including the prize-winning Buxton Pride Steel Orchestra and the North Rival Multilateral School. Performances will also be done by the joint choir of more than 100 students from schools across Guyana. The Woodside Choir, religious groups, and other organizations will put the icing on the Jubilee cake.
A nationalistic flavor as against a carnival flavor. That is what we're focusing on for this Jubilee parade. With respect to the flag raising ceremony, that's on the night of the 25th, and we will be starting around 8 p.m. that evening. That program has a twofold presentation. One, there will be the cultural aspect of the program, and that will showcase approximately 1,000 young people and also adults, involving also choir, steel band, and dancers, drummers, etc., who will be displaying on that tarmac there different creative designs and show to entertain the patrons. After that, we'll have the ceremonial part, which will deal with from the arrival of the Prime Minister and the President. Then we'll go into the announcement of awards, the speech of the President, and also the military bands display. Then we move on to the hoisting of the golden arrowhead into fireworks, and that will culminate. There's a number of other little things that will be happening in there, but that generally is what will be the flag raising ceremony. Just recapping, it will be have a cultural aspect, ceremonial aspect. The ceremonial aspect deals primarily with the military. The cultural aspect deals with showcasing aspects of Guyana culture, from the different dances, performances with respect to steel band, choir, and also drum and drumming.
So let's reflect, celebrate, and aspire.
That has brought us to the end of Guyana 411 for this week. Remember, this and all other junior programs can be viewed on our YouTube channel. You can also get updates from our Facebook page. Do join us again next week for more on Guyana's 50th Jubilee celebrations. On behalf of the staff of the Government Information Agency, GINA, we wish you happy independence and encourage all Guyanese to continue to live in harmony to build a stronger nation. Do go out and enjoy in the celebrations. Remember, several events that celebrate Guyana's growth and development in the past 50 years are happening across the country and even in your community. I am Shivani Rampaswad. See you at the grand events.